Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, a serial technology entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, held at 20 of those, but scaled 10 of those to success. And I turned that roller coaster of a ride into my book, Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach people how to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every win. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a nearshore software engineering firm helping existing teams scale. And today I am joined by Sam Clemens, CEO and co-founder of Reprise. Sam has been a career B2B entrepreneur. He's got venture capital experience, been a multi-time founder. Sam, welcome to the show.
Steve, it's good to be here. Thank you for the invite.
You bet. And Sam, right out of Boston. Sam, tell us about the journey of your career and what led you to be the CEO of Reprise.
So, as you said, I'm co-founder and CEO at Reprise. And we started it basically because of a problem we had ourselves in my co-founders and I in all of our previous startups, which was that it was always a challenge, harder than it should be to demo the product, which seems crazy, right? Like it's software. Why not just run it, get on a sales call, show the product? But it's been
I'm a guy who's had 30 companies. You are always scrambling for that demo, especially in the early stages.
Always. Oh, it gets even worse. So Reprise sells to large enterprise software companies now, mainly the bigger the better. And what we found is that the larger the company, actually, the bigger the problem is. If you have, 1,000 or 10,000 people in your sales team, you can't wing it when it comes to a demo. You actually need a demo platform. So that's why we started Reprise.
Now, walk through kind of the journey of your career.
If you wish, I'm basically a career product guy. 5 startups, all of them on the product side, mostly early stage. Work, 2 companies that got acquired, co-founder at my last company called Insight Squared, was a sales analytics system, and then co-founder here at Reprise. The pattern on all of it is I'm an early stage guy. So I enjoy the that initial phase when you're the ideation and the finding product market fit, and then the scaling phase when you're trying to find out how do we establish the first processes in a company, but without breaking whatever is the magic that you discovered during the early stage.
Awesome. Now, pre-show, you were telling me the story how you were teaching a college business school class called Launching Technology Ventures. And that was a big part of how the idea for Reprise came to the table.
Yeah. So worse, not even college, grad school.
Okay.
I was teaching at Harvard B School, and they have an excellent second-year curriculum for entrepreneurship that teaches everything from, like operating stuff like sales, marketing techniques. They get into engineering. And I was teaching one of the core entrepreneurship courses, like how do you do pitch decks? How do you think about hiring, like standing up, you're doing the initial sales in a company, like founder-led sales through to hiring your first maybe non-exec salesperson to hiring your first sales exec. When do you do make those transitions, all that kind of stuff. Great class. And during the class, I had still stayed in touch with my previous technical co-founder, and he'd come to me like 9 times being like, hey, after our last gig, like let's go do another. And here's an idea, and here's another idea. And all of them were like ideas without problems, right? There was like technology in search of a solution until like it was like the 13th one. He came to me and he said, all right, you're going to hate this like you hated all the other ones. But like, remember that demo problem that we had at Insight Squared? And I was like, oh yeah, we had like the same thing, even worse at HubSpot. Like, he's like, okay, we can solve that. We can make it super easy. And he showed me a prototype of like how he could essentially capture an app and allow a business team, not an engineering team, to make a demo environment. And I was like, finally, this is a problem. Like, yes, let's do this one. And so during the class, I'm teaching a class on entrepreneurship, and I'm starting a company using all the things I'm teaching during the class. And so as I'm teaching, I'm actually bringing into the class, like, here's what we did this week. We did some discovery. We had to set pricing on our first deal. Like, we made it up. Here's how we came to that. So it was super interesting to a way to teach a class when you're doing it yourself.
What a great experience for students. My MBA degree I got in entrepreneurship, and this was, 23 years ago when entrepreneurship as a major was new. at colleges. And what pissed me off, of all my professors, only one was an actual entrepreneur. The rest were professors. And it's like, you want to learn from people who are out there doing it, not people who are just studying it. So that's a great story, and what a great experience for the people in the class.
Yeah. Academia is slow to change, but they do change. And
Uh,
so I think at many of these B schools, it's taken them 2 decades, but they've gotten there. And so they'll typically have two groups of professors. They'll have the theory leaders, the people that have PhDs in the thing, like PhDs in economics, PhDs in process analysis, and all these other things. And then you'll have the practitioners, people that don't have PhDs, but they sort of PhDs in the school of hard knocks. And the combination of the two is super interesting because you get these deep thinkers paired with in the same room, talking, teaching the same classes in many cases with practitioners who are talking about the theory and sort of bringing it home on like, it's a nice idea, but this is actually what really happens. And I think it leads to a really interesting learning environment. If you're a 20 something, a business person, and you're looking for, okay, how can I take my career up a notch? It's an interesting way to spend, 2 years, which is the critical question. Like, should I keep on going with my career, or should I spend 2 years of my precious life in maybe a detour, or maybe a way that allows you to escalate?
I didn't necessarily enjoy school in that, how is this going to help me in the real world? And the entrepreneurship classes were the first time where I was like, okay, I see how I can do this. And I worked for a few years and then went back to get my MBA in entrepreneurship. So I had some real world experience. And when I was done with my MBA in entrepreneurship, I'm like, I want to get a PhD. Like, this is the first time I enjoyed learning. And then I met a bunch of the PhDs in entrepreneurship, and I was like, well, these aren't successful entrepreneurs. These are researchers that research on it. And I'm like, all right, I'll get the PhD of hard knocks first academically in it.
Yeah, there's life hits us all, right? So practical considerations matter. I think if I had more years, if time were not a concern, I think I would love to go back, go get another master's, maybe a PhD in something, maybe comp sci. I never got it. My degree is in math. I
Okay.
would love to go back and do comp sci. I think it's just fascinating, particularly with where things are going now with machine learning and AI. I think it would just be. I love learning, and I think it would be just a great set of years.
And not to dwell on that, but universities need to come around when it relates to computer science and using AI tools. I've had some CIOs of large universities on this podcast, and they get frustrated because it's hard for fresh grad engineers to get jobs as it is. And companies are like, well, you got to train them in all the AI tools so they can be more productive. And a lot of schools still see that as ethical considerations that they're trying to get over, which can
The
be
genie is not
frustrating.
going back in the bottle.
It absolutely is not.
Right. And so, as I mentioned, universities, they're slow to move. And sometimes that's a good thing, but they do move.
Well, at Reprise, tell us some current projects that you're working on right now.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I view using AI in two groups. One is how do we use it internally to get more productive at all the things we do and across, call it all 6 functions of our company, right? Marketing, sales, CS, product, and jobs. Every single function. How do we make that more efficient using AI? And that is, you could do a whole podcast. You could do 6 podcasts on that. And then the other group is how do you factor it into the solution that you're providing for customers? And that second group is super interesting. It's obviously very specific to whatever the solution is. Like for many companies, that might be like putting an AI chatbot into their solution. For us, it's not. For us, what we do is technically speaking, it's complicated, right? You're standing up a demo environment, which is like a replica of a production environment, but more flexible for a business team to use. It's an environment that you can launch, you can stage carefully with all the perfect anonymized data that you need, maybe like verticalized for pharma or whatever you're doing on your next call. And you can then launch that demo environment 10,000 times. And so it's exactly the same at launch. It's very different than a production environment. And to do that, to stand up that demo environment, we actually need to do things that are like not the way the software was designed. We need to basically box up that front end by intercepting calls it's making back to the servers and spoofing them and anonymizing the data and all these things. It's technically challenging, and it requires a lot of like, say, intercepting 1,000 or 10,000 requests. And without AI, it would be almost infeasible. And so right now we're making excellent use of AI to scale our solution itself, not by a chatbot that appears in the product, but in the core of the product itself. Like creating, configuring, populating the demo data that goes into an environment, like all of that. The core workflow, the actions in the environment is what we're using AI for. And it's
Now,
interesting. I think there's a lot of talk about like AI for we're not touching that at all. We're doing the way we're using it is AI to do things in our solution.
so frame it up for me. Let's just say I'm an enterprise company, 5,000 plus people in the company, and we have a new version of our software that we've replatformed that we want to demo. How does Reprise work with us to recreate that environment in a demo fashion?
Yeah. So there's a number of use cases that are super common. So and they range the full width of the sales funnel, if you will. Like common sales funnel you probably might have in your company might be a pipeline generation stage where you're using assets to generate interest, sort of like top of the funnel.
Yep.
And then you'd have maybe a middle of the funnel where your sales team is doing the initial engagement with whoever the customer is, and they're doing like a first call demo. And then maybe a bottom of the funnel where, like, say, your sales engineering team might be getting on the call to do a more in depth discussion around roles and permissions or integrations or something like that, something particular that the customer really wants to drill down on. Demos are involved in all three of those stages. So at the prospecting stage, your team, your marketing team might be sending out assets. Like here's a PDF, here's a video. Well, you know what converts better than any of those assets is showing product. Product is the best converting asset there is. It's what buyers want to see. But most companies are unable to pull product forwards because their production environments were not designed for it, unless they happen to run a freemium business model, which is uncommon, right? Particularly in enterprise software.
Yes.
So one is you can make a product asset and you can pull that forward in your sales funnel, which is just for straight up higher conversion. Showing product converts better than other assets, period. Done. Middle of the funnel, you've got a different challenge. You have your sales team, they're getting on calls to do a first call demo. And depending on what your situation is, you might have an environment that was made by an engineering team, in which case, you've got challenges around maintaining it, keeping the data anonymized. You probably have issues where whatever you're trying to show, like affects the demo environment, and then now you've got a problem for your next call. You probably have issues around making the data tell the right story. So two examples of that would be early days HubSpot. The sales team would demo off of HubSpot's own portal, which is Portal 53 in the system. And so they would get on a call and they would say like, hey, let's talk about your marketing needs. And I'll show you like, this is HubSpot's own portal. These are our leads. These are our keywords. And here's our CMS, where we've created our homepage and our landing pages. And it was like week 2 of some, new batch of AEs. And the AE was showing off the CMS and accidentally deleted HubSpot's homepage, the actual homepage, the real one.
Oops.
Yeah, live on a call, right? And I was leading product. I had not yet prioritized the CMS features for backup and restore. And so we had no homepage for a day. And that's just because like doing sales demos is hard. Um,
Interesting.
Another example would be we've got several customers who are banks. They're showing off their banking portal or whatever for channel partnerships. And you want to show a wire transfer, but you can't do an actual wire transfer in a production environment live on a call because then you're actually transferring money. So how do you show it? That's all middle of the funnel. And then you have the bottom of the funnel where we can create like almost full replicate environments, more like an open world thing where an SE can wander anywhere and show anything.
Excellent. Well, tell us about your engineering team that's pulling all this off. Just some background on how many engineers you have, where you're located, the work model.
Yep. So we're 20 engineers at this point. We're about half domestic US and half offshore. And for offshore, with this company, we elected to go Eastern Europe, specifically Ukraine. Now, we started the company in 2020 before the Ukraine war started. which obviously was a rather interesting impact situation when
Right.
it did happen, and one that we've adjusted with, but we still have.
I would say, when you look at minds of software engineers worldwide, Silicon Valley is the top, and I'd put Ukraine as number two. They seem to have like bred software engineering into their culture. And it's definitely crazy and sad of what's been going on there. And do you know, was a lot of your team there able to relocate?
Yes. So we had a few that were in like Kharkiv, which was dicey. Many of them have relocated to the western side to Lviv, and some are in Poland and surrounding.
Gotcha. Now, how does your team manage the time zone differences to make sure there's enough collaboration?
It's a challenge, but it's not an insurmountable one. It's one of the things that we factor into. Is it worth doing onshore, offshore? And if offshore, where? Should it be same time zone? Should we go to South America, or should we do Eastern Europe or another geography? It's one of the factors to factor in. And for us, we decided it was worth it because of the talent we could find in Eastern Europe and the Ukraine, especially for the maybe not the more designy parts of a product, but for the tougher technical challenge stuff. The talent there is super strong.
No doubt. So, as the CEO of a tech company, we're in Q4 2025. What's the biggest challenges you're facing now?
The biggest one that we're seeing, mainly because we sell to large enterprise, is just the uncertainty in the macro environment. So our customers are Fortune 100. They're not even software companies. Like we sell to banks, manufacturing, retail. We've got two pharma companies that are customers. Basically, everyone past a certain size, all companies make software. And if they make software and they use it for any part of their go-to-market process, then they probably have challenges around demos. And what we found is that at that size, a lot of them are looking at the macro environment and trying to figure out what's going on. Should we be pulling back in our spending? Should we be buying more software tools? Or should we be tightening down or expanding? And that's our customer base. And so how they change their spending, that affects us.
And it's definitely up in the air right now and changing regularly as the global issues keep panning themselves out. Trying to say that in the most politically correct manner.
Yeah. One of our large customers is, they had originally started a couple of years ago with us for sub 100K per year, and then upgraded to about a half million a year, and came to us this year and said, hey, we'd love to do a full company wide rollout, which would be like an easy 10x increase. And what they're trying to figure out is like, is straight up macro environment. Like, is now the time to go for that big rollout, or should we try and do something piecemeal? And it's entirely gated on like macro decisions being made at, C-level top three people of a Fortune 50 company.
Hmm.
So the macro stuff, I think, is impacting business more now than I've seen in the last 20 years.
So, there's certainly, we would all agree, there's so much noise about AI in business today. Um, to the point where even for us tech leaders who stay on top of these things, it is changing so rapidly, let alone the people who are not in tech and don't understand it. What are your thoughts where AI should be playing a role in organizations to get the best benefit?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you see a lot of talk, maybe positioning, maybe it's on purpose being controversial, but you'll see some like companies saying like, AI is going to kill these roles. Will AI kill the salesperson? Will AI kill the sales engineer? I don't think that will happen. I think if you look at any function that we have in business today, maybe not any function, but the most important ones, there's a mix in that function of tasks that are repetitive, necessary for scaling, not necessarily the drudge work, but the sausage making, the machinery.
Yes.
And then within that same role, sales engineering, marketing, could be anything, engineering, there's the real judgment based, creativity based stuff. My opinion is that you can think about AI and humans almost, let's be super cold about it, two different types of tools. And the AI tool will be could maybe do both, but is best suited for those repetitive scalable tasks. And the human tool is best used for what humans are uncommonly good at, which is connecting dots that are not really connected yet. And, inference and judgment. And for that, businesses will still want the human. And
And
so I don't think
I
it will be killing roles. I think it'll allow the humans to focus on what humans do best.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I think it will help people be productive, and I think it will shift roles where roles are going to evolve, and there'll probably be new roles created as part of it. Granted, arguably, this is one of the bigger tech advances we've seen over the past couple decades with a lot of impact. Every time, something new comes out, whether it was the internet, then the cloud, then, AI, everyone's like, oh, it's going to kill all these jobs. And no, it creates new jobs and it does shift the roles. And, you look at all the studies coming out by MIT and others, like 95% of organizations are having negative or no ROI on their generative AI spend. And, I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. And I think a lot of companies are using it the wrong way or what it's not meant to do yet.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I'm surprised. I've seen the early studies as well about the lack of ROI. I'm surprised because I think when you use AI for what it's good for, I think there's real obvious easy wins. Things around like research analysis, content generation. Like it's just really, in its current state, really well suited for that. And so I think if a company is looking for how do we get a safe multiple of our, you don't have to be on the bleeding edge of usage. You can use what it's clearly already well set up for, and you can get good ROI. Now, other companies, other leaders will say, hey, I want to be on the bleeding edge. I want to try using AI for stuff that maybe hasn't been tried yet. And if that's the case, then like any technology, you need to be prepared that the ROI doesn't.
Right. Right. So you have been leading product side technology companies for a long time. I think undisputedly software fails when the product is and the engineering team aren't in sync. And even more importantly, though, you're making sure to build what end users actually want, not what you think they want. What is your take on kind of the history of that and the best path for companies to be successful?
It's a good question. It's one that I'm passionate about and maybe a little geeky about. Is
Come on, the show is called Software Leaders Uncensored. You're allowed to get a little geeky here.
it's okay if I'm a little geeky. All right, so I'm kind of a process geek. I just think like mechanisms and machines and operations are just super fascinating. And that includes, not just computer systems, but also like manufacturing systems. I just think they're really interesting how to set them up, how to configure, how to tune them. Anyway, so the way it's possible, not the only way, but one way I like thinking about producing and developing software is from a manufacturing standpoint
Okay.
because it's not dissimilar to manufacturing, a particular type of manufacturing. So like in manufacturing, there's maybe broadly two different types of assembly. One is where like an assembly line where you're making the same thing 10,000, and that's not software, right? We don't make the same thing 10,000 times. We make it once and then we run it 10,000 times. But there's another kind of manufacturing. Think of it as like the custom job shop. It's often used for like machine parts, which is designed to quickly take in a custom description of something and quickly do a multifaceted development of it and do that loop to produce something custom, to do that in a repeated scalable way, to do the custom thing in a scalable way. That is a manufacturing process. Has been around. It has a term. It's called the job shop. It's been around for 50 years, 60 years, as a technique. And that's basically what modern software is or could or should be like. And so,
So
yeah,
using that analogy, how does that modern manufacturing job shop make sure they're manufacturing exactly what people want, not what they think they want?
yeah. So if you go back 2, 3 decades, and I'm dating myself here. Uh,
Hey, my age has a 5 in front of it. I'm with you.
okay, good. Five's united. A waterfall was the process we used. And the thing that the engineering team was building was the spec, right? And so the goal as a product leader at that time, people in product, we were in marketing. Product didn't exist. But the goal was how accurate could you make the spec? And the big issue was that like you could never make it good enough. No matter how you tried to anticipate or describe what you were doing, once you handed that off, you threw that over the wall to a build team, the complexity of the actual thing they were building is always greater than whatever 14-page Word doc you were trying to generate. This is a truism, right? The no matter how deep you go, it doesn't match the reality of the thing itself. And so there were always questions that came up. Not to mention the fact that by the time it actually started getting built or started rolled out, you had already learned more about the customer needs. And so, everyone knows this in software these days, thence came the agile movement. There's a bit of a religion there. I'm not bought into the like agile capital A. We do agile small a, but it's basically this idea that like we in our organization, I have a kill on site order on specs.
Kill
I
on
believe that the,
site.
the most dangerous thing about a spec is that someone might actually build it. So what I tell our team is that the spec is the conversation between the PM and the engineer. Now there might be things like assets, sketches, mock-ups, a spreadsheet of data, maybe a video of a customer trying to interact with something. You can have assets, you can have artifacts, you might even have a document that describes something, but none of it is the spec. The spec is the conversation. And that guarantees you that you have the highest fidelity build that's happening, the most recent data and the most tuned output possible.
I
But it
like
is
it.
more labor intensive.
I like it. Sam, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today and sharing about your journey and how you've learned firsthand on how to, from the product side perspective, how to make sure software is successful. Love what you're doing at Reprise, helping companies do that. Before we wrap, what's your no BS advice for today's tech leaders who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these interesting times?
In these times, embrace AI because that genie is not going in the bottle. And I think let me add one, which is maybe more of a long term thing, is just always stay in touch with what the customer's needs are, because all bad things come from getting out of touch with customer needs.
Couldn't agree more. Sam, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't, well, we'll just send it to your competitors. Might be the edge they're looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.